Kendrick Lamar has done his first interview after his big rap battle with Drake. And it's kind of disappointing. I know. All of the Kendrick super fans are going to come for me, but I have to be honest. That's what we do on this channel. Kendrick's first interview with Harper's Bazaar was kind of a letdown. Let's get into it. So I'm going to break down this whole Kendrick Lamar interview in Harper's Bazaar. He was interviewed by SZA. We'll go through all of the quotes and what everyone is talking about. But after that, I'm going to let you know why this interview doesn't work for me and give Kendrick just some free industry advice on how I wish he had handled his first post-battle interview. So I've got my computer pulled up, and this is the article. The artist has consistently pushed hip-hop to new heights. In advance of his Super Bowl performance, he gets personal with friend and collaborator SZA. We're going to come to that. So SZA is the one who did this interview, and that's one of the reasons I have an issue. But let's keep going. So if you scroll down, you can see that SZA did the interview, but the introduction, so this is like the opening paragraphs, was done by someone named Caitlin Greenidge. So I'm not familiar with who that is. I'm guessing that's a staffer, probably at Harper's Bazaar. Did look it up, and Caitlin is a features editor at Harper's Bazaar. So she's someone who works there, and she's the one who wrote the introduction. And she might have helped kind of shape this interview, but we'll break that down once we get to the actual questions. So before we even get into it, you can already tell the audience for this piece. And for those who don't know, Harper's Bazaar is a women's fashion publication. It's been around forever, but it's big among female celebrities. As they say in this article, Kendrick is only the 5th male artist to appear on the cover, so it mostly speaks to a fashion audience. I would say general pop culture, celebrity, so this is not being written for hip-hop fans. And one really clear way you can see that, look at this opening paragraph. They mentioned Section 80, Good Kid, Mad City, the fact that Kendrick won a Pulitzer, and that he's going to be doing the Super Bowl. What are we missing? Nowhere does it mention that Kendrick was the catalyst and the finisher of one of the biggest rap battles in our recent memory. And in fact, this article doesn't even mention the D word, D being Drake. So you can tell that this was a very, how should we say, curated interview. So we keep scrolling. Now, one thing I will say, these pictures look incredible. The photographer, the lighting, Kendrick's skin is glowing. He looks absolutely amazing. It has very much like this golden hour feel. So wherever they shot this, it's really incredible lighting and Kendrick looks amazing. But I would expect nothing else from a top fashion publication. Now this paragraph is where it gets interesting. It says, for this issue, only the 5th time this magazine has put a man alone on the cover, Lamar wanted SZA to interview him. So already Kendrick decided who was going to do the interview. I wonder behind the scenes, did Harper's Bazaar offer to have one of their own journalists or maybe a freelancer do it and Kendrick and his team turned it down? That's very feasible. Nowadays, artists, they hold a lot of power. And we've talked about this in my previous videos about celebrities and their very, let's say, tenuous relationship with the media. A lot of top artists, when they do a cover, instead of the publication holding all the cards, the artist will come in. I want this interviewer, this photographer, this hair and makeup. I want final edit, final retouching. Like they are the ones in control. Here, Kendrick turns to SZA, and they were former label mates over at TDE. They've known each other. In 2018, they had that big record, All the Stars. So there is a comfort there. And I'm sure Kendrick's sitting down with SZA, again, a woman, somebody who's known to the Harper's Bazaar audience, but also known to Kendrick. He did have that inherent comfort, but also inherent control. This is how the writer from Harper's Bazaar describes the interaction. The kind of free-flowing conversation you might overhear between two friends in the front seat of the car while you're in the back, slightly stoned and cruising through the night. So this is a very friendly conversation. And my guess is that Kendrick and SZA were talking. The person from Harper's Bazaar was probably recording it and ended up transcribing and editing it to make it into the final article. I just don't see SZA having to type this up, edit it, make it all kind of flow. So I'm pretty sure that was handled to Harper's Bazaar. So we keep scrolling down, and again, these images are incredible. Kendrick looks great. These could be album artwork images. It really is a beautiful editorial. So they're talking, and this is like the meat of the article. So this is like the pull quotes that everybody is sort of repurposing on social media. SZA says, "Can I ask you a hyper masculine question? You can also tell me to shut the fuck up. What does not like us mean to you?" So Kendrick laughs and says, "Not like us. Not like us is the energy of who I am, the type of man I represent. Now, if you identify with the man I represent," and it looks like SZA jumps in, she says, "break the man down for me." And Kendrick says, "This man has morals, he has values, he believes in something, he stands on something, he's not pandering. He's a man who could recognize his mistakes and not be afraid to share the mistakes and can dig deep down into fear-based ideologies or experiences to be able to express them without feeling like he's less of a man. If I'm thinking of not like us, I'm thinking of me and whoever identifies with that." What does that even mean? I don't know how high they were during this conversation, but that means absolutely nothing. This is like Kendrick going into the fifth dimension and just saying whatever he wants to say, which part of it I love because it does play into this Kendrick as like this Jedi and the boogeyman. But I think this is where you need to push back. What are you talking about? And are you inherently saying that if Not Like Us represents this kind of man, the antithesis is Drake, and Drake represents something very different? So I think there is an opportunity that SZA could have pushed back a little bit more. And really, that's kind of it. So the conversation continues, and they're talking about yoga and ayahuasca and all this kind of hippy dippy stuff, which is great. Again, for a Harper's Bazaar audience who probably doesn't follow rap, especially not to the extent that we follow it, they probably don't care. The rap battle was a blip on their radar. They just want to see pretty pictures of Kendrick, and that's about it. I also think for the diehard fans, because I have been seeing some of the feedback on social media, they're happy. I mean, Kendrick doesn't do a lot of interviews, so whatever scraps he gives them, they're perfectly happy with. But I just wanted more. And I'm going to stand on my first reaction to this. The pictures look great. Kendrick looks amazing. But after the biggest rap battle that we've had in a very long time, Kendrick Lamar should have talked to a real rap journalist. We need to hear about this battle through his eyes and also contextualized through someone who knows hip hop, knows the history of battles, followed the battle closely, and understands what the repercussions are, not just for Kendrick and Drake, but for everybody involved. And I think that's just missing from this article. And this goes back to my sort of ongoing, I guess you could say, issue. And I've talked about it a lot on this channel. And in fact, I just did a breakdown video. I'm going to link it at the end about why rappers need to speak to real rap media, not to fanboys, not to trolls, not to people on their payroll, not to their friends. Like, there has to be some sort of a respect and conversation with authorities, with critics. We talk so much, for example, about somebody like a Tupac Shakur. So much of him being an icon and a legend comes from his interviews, whether he was sitting down with Kevin Powell for Vibe, whether he was sitting down with MTV News when he was incarcerated. These moments were so poignant and significant in the making of Tupac and then the amplification of him as a legend. And I feel we're just in an era now where the biggest artists, they don't care. And that has a real negative trickle-down effect with other artists. And I'm going to be honest. And one thing I want people to look at, when you see the way critics analyze this move, you're going to see who's a real critic and who can be unbiased versus who's a Kendrick fanboy. Because let's be honest, if Drake had made the same move, if Drake had decided, I'm going to go to a fashion publication and have, one of my friends, my famous friends interview me, I'm not going to mention Kendrick, I'm not going to mention the battle, I think there would have been a lot of criticism, a lot of vitriol. Look what happened when that fly fishing magazine, when that cover came out, everyone made fun of Drake, and rightfully so. It feels like he's running away from the conversations he should be having and instead is sort of like distracting with other things. And we love Kendrick, we respect Kendrick, but we also have to be honest, whether it's as critics, whether people who are in the media watch the media, and also as fans. Kendrick has always prided himself in being the rapper's rapper. And in fact, his entire legacy is truly rooted in being an incredible MC. The Pulitzer is because he's a poet. Even being able to do the Super Bowl, it's because he's a great rapper, a great performer. And it just kind of makes me sad that his first conversation wasn't with somebody who understands him as a lyricist. Let's be honest, if he wanted to do this for a fashion publication, I wrote a book on hip hop and fashion. My book, Fashion Killa, opens with Kendrick rapping at the Louis Vuitton show. He's wearing the crown of thorns from Tiffany, and it's this opening moment of Kendrick as the MC ushering hip hop fashion into the new generation. Fashion Magazine wanted, there are people who can speak both languages. That we can speak hip hop, we can also speak fashion, pop culture, celebrity. I understand that maybe they're not going to hire just like a strictly rap person to do this interview, but I promise you, especially now where a lot of freelancers are out there, a lot of pens and bylines available for work, you could find a quality person to do this interview. As I said in my previous video about why rappers need to talk to music journalists, there's a reason we're in this era where podcasters, social media, even YouTubers, we are driving the commentary. A lot of that reason is because the traditional rap media doesn't exist in the way that it once did. And the biggest artists just aren't going to sit down and talk to rap media. If they are, it has to be so curated. It's going to be with someone who's going to softball them questions. It might even be someone on their payroll, either directly or indirectly. And it's just not a great interview. And I think across the board, as I mentioned that video, I would love to see the big three, Kendrick, Drake, Cole, help reinvigorate hip hop media. They came up in XXL and The Source and MTV News and Hot 97. These are the cosigns that they chased. And now I think it's still important for them to remember that a lot of your fan base lives there. A lot of your fan base, your day ones, your loyalists, they're real hip hop heads. They're not these fair weather fans who don't follow your music and only care when you have something going on in the larger zeitgeist. It's funny, if I had to look at media strategy, I would say Drake has no strategy. He follows whatever's hot at the moment. If it's a TikToker, he's going to sit down with them. If it's a streamer, he's going to show up to that person's party. He will follow the trends, and whatever is hot, that's where he goes. Kendrick is the opposite. I would say if Drake has no strategy, Kendrick is almost too, I would say, guarded and curated. And I'm not saying that he needs to spill his life story or his business out in like a way that he might feel is irresponsible or doesn't represent him properly, but he's the other extreme where it's like he'll only speak when it's done in a way that's just ultra curated. And I think that leaves a lot of fans just missing and wanting more from him. If I had to give Kendrick Lamar just like free media advice as a music journalist, I would say, Kendrick, you can do it all. I'm sure this Harper's Bazaar look is a really big win for him, and it's something that he's really proud of. So by all means, talk to a fashion magazine, have SZA do the interview. There's nothing wrong with that. But I would also encourage him and his team diversify your media presence where you are talking to legitimate, credible journalists. Again, I have to always underscore that because a lot of people in this game are not that. And then maybe do, an interview with like a XXL, do an interview with Rolling Stone, and then you still have the opportunity to do something like a documentary. That's actually my prediction. I think that Kendrick and Dave Free are probably doing some type of a documentary. It just makes sense given their interests and what they're sort of moving to behind the scenes. But I think you can do that, but also still talk to a journalist, because no matter what, you telling your story, that's great. That will give one specific lens. But I do think being open to critique, open to like intelligent conversation is really important, and also just missing across the board right now in hip hop. So that's my hot take about Kendrick Lamar's interview in Harper's Bazaar. Yeah, I know. I'm disappointed. And I think, if anything, this just shows that I am probably one of the few people who, critique Drake and Kendrick equally. So let the record show that. But I would love to know your thoughts. Are you happy that Kendrick is saying something? Are you disappointed that he decided to go to a fashion publication and not a hip hop publication? Do you think that he should have spoken to a real journalist and actually had that deep dive conversation of the genesis of the battle, what was going through his mind with every track, how the battle ended, the things that we as hip hop heads want to know? Let me know what you're thinking in the comments.